So welcome to the meeting. It's July 12th, 2022. Hattie Johnson is going to be our main public speaker. Main topic is addressing public safety at low-head dams. Hattie, do you know where this picture was taken?
I do, and this actually, it was taken by my colleague Evan Stafford. This is up on the on the Poudre River up in northern Colorado.
Evan Stafford and Kyle McCutcheon wrote one of the early Bibles for all of the river sections up in Colorado. It's the big thick Bible that every kayaker treasures, and you can find them online. They're hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, so, I think the last one I saw was about 500.
Yeah, keep your eye on the thrift stores and stores and yard sales. If you ever come across one, buy it quick.
Yeah, and Evan is American Whitewater's National Communications Director. But he lives in Fort Collins, and we get to steal him for a lot of our work here in the Southern Rockies.
Hattie is the Southern Rockies Stewardship Director at American Whitewater. She's based in Carbondale, Colorado, on the banks of the Crystal and Roaring Fork rivers. Hattie has been working on a wide range of issues around low-head dams and recreation, even prior to career at AW, American Whitewater, working with river engineering firm, turning these structures into whitewater parks and other recreational assets. And we've seen evidence of some of that reconstruction up in Farmington, places like Berg Park, the Abiquiu Wave. So it's a great effort. Her experience and resources also makes her an invaluable member on the NMPC board. That's the New Mexico Paddlers Coalition. Tonight, she'll be talking about some of these example projects, efforts at the local and state levels to address these issues on the ground, as well as diving into American Whitewater's federal policy work to address the public safety hazard and ecological impact of low-head dams. So without further ado, I'd like to pass this on to Hattie. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Scott. Thank you guys all for having me tonight. So first off, thank you guys so much for having me. As Scott mentioned, I've had the pleasure of working with him and Donna and others with the New Mexico Paddlers Coalition, for a while now. And unfortunately, it has always been in these little boxes on the computer screen. Hopefully one day that'll change. I live in Carbondale, and actually that river behind me is the Crystal. It runs through my backyard. So up in Colorado, I will be talking a little bit about some work we've been doing here in Colorado as well. But yeah, really excited to be here. And also just wanted to congratulate and thank you and the Adobe Whitewater Club as a whole for taking that stand for river access at the Supreme Court. That is going to be some amazing legal precedent that's now set and securely protect public access to rivers. So we have been sharing the story of that through American Whitewater kind of across the country, and no matter where people live, boaters, all corners of the country are extremely excited for New Mexico, proud of New Mexico, and that came from you guys. So that's huge, and didn't want to miss my opportunity to thank you all. And without any further intro, I'll just hop right in. I am gonna talk a lot, mostly about what American Whitewater is, kind of how we're approaching this issue of low-head dams, safety at low-head dams, on all these kind of different governmental levels. And then at the end, I'll get into a couple of projects that I'd worked on in I like to say my previous life. I'm professionally a landscape architect. I worked with a river engineering firm for a long time. This is actually me in my previous boss surfing a whitewater park, we worked on, designed, and managed the construction of in Colorado. And so those, once we kind of get into the project level stuff, I'll kind of bring some of that experience in. But just kind of quickly going to go over how this issue particularly kind of covers a lot of the bases we attempt to address here at American Whitewater. We'll talk a little bit about what is a low head dam, how those are defined, what the danger is. However, speaking to a bunch of paddlers, that's usually, you guys pretty likely understand that. Get into a little bit more data background of the issue that they pose specifically to public safety. Talk a little bit about some federal legislation proposed right now that'll better identify the location of these structures all across the country. I will show you, and we'll drive around a little bit of a web-based prioritization tool that we developed for the state of Colorado. This one is super hot off the presses as of yesterday. So there is a high chance of likelihood that as we're messing around with it, you'll see you might need to make a couple adjustments. So, but hopefully that's not the case and it runs smoothly. And then lastly, like I mentioned, talk about a few on the ground examples. So if you don't know, American Whitewater is a national river conservation organization. I always like to say we kind of work at the cross section of recreation and conservation. Our vision really is that river advocates or boaters, recreationists, river recreationists are the most powerful and effective advocates for river conservation. We kind of break our overall mission into 3 pillars of protecting, restoring, and enjoying rivers. I think the Lowhead Dam work fits really well in all 3 of those. A lot of the stuff we were doing right now has to do around safety, of safely enjoying our rivers. As we get into the more project level stuff where we're retrofitting or even removing Lowhead Dam structures, that's absolutely a river restoration project. And then I won't get too much into this today, but kind of another piece of our current Lowhead Dam work is protecting rivers, especially rivers either designated or identified administratively in the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act, protecting them against dam construction. That's kind of a core tenet of the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act, is to prevent future dams. However, we're in a number of projects around the Southwest specifically too. There's small dams being built for species protection, which is a good goal, but they often have impacts to other species and to recreational opportunities. So the Lowhead Dam topic really kind of hits in, it scratches all the itches of the AW mission. So a Lowhead Dam, it is a man-made structure. It goes from one bank to the other. It is what they call a run-of-river dam. It's not specifically storing and or releasing any water. Water kind of typically continuously flows over the head of that dam. These structures, really in the 1800s, they were built in massive excess all around the country. We'll look at some data from an organization out of the Southeast that started to do a really an amazing job of inventorying these structures. You'll see that we have a lot here in the West and Southwest. You know, our Lowhead Dam structures often are used for diverting water for irrigation, sometimes municipal or industrial uses, but the proliferation on the East Coast of, you know, small hydropower, milling operations, things like that, they're in an impressive abundance. So there, we have no idea exactly how many structures there are, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, but we know that they're everywhere. We here in Colorado, the Colorado Department of Natural Resources in 2019 did a inventory via Google Earth and found about 1,103 low-head dam structures on rivers around the state. Currently, there's an inventory done by an outside partner that has New Mexico having about 511 low-head dam structures. So they're everywhere. I'm sure you guys have a few in your head right now. And again, as you know, they're dangerous. Some of them are not dangerous all the time. This image here is showing a recirculating current that I imagine you guys are all quite familiar with, the mechanics of the hydraulics of that. And they're these very, one of the difficult aspects of identifying these projects for retrofit or removal is being able to assess the hazard or the potential hazard, specifically of the recirculating current remotely. And that's kind of the best way, because of the immense proliferation of these structures. Having a way to identify those that are kind of the worst actors is hard to do on a wide scale. And again, I'll get into this a little bit more, but that's really where the recreational community, I think, comes in a really powerful way. Knowing where are dams that are creating an issue, that are dangerous, that are breaking up a reach unnecessarily, and that provide or present a danger at a large range of flows. So to get a little bit more into the hazard, there is data that accounts for around 1,400 deaths at low-head dams around the country. That is a lot. This what we're looking at here is the number of those or is the low-head dam fatalities specifically on whitewater rivers. So this comes from American Whitewater's website. We have an accident database on our website that's been maintained since 1972 and identifies fatalities on whitewater rivers. If you're familiar, have used the American Whitewater website at all, we've got a map that shows that contains a national whitewater inventory. Excuse me. So these are incidents that have taken place on those rivers. From our data, we're showing 10% of all fatalities happen at low-head dams. Just under, kind of in the same range as other and unknown. Excuse me. I stress that these are on whitewater rivers. A big factor in low-head dam fatalities is the skill set and river awareness of the user. Our database misses a few low-head dam fatalities on more flatwater rivers where they're not included in our whitewater inventory. So to me, that means this value of 10% is pretty impressive, because for the most part, these are people already, selecting to use a whitewater river. That doesn't necessarily mean they have high experience or skill level or anything like that, but it's this is kind of taking out those more flatwater reaches as well. So it's a significant hazard, as I imagine you all are somewhat aware of. So what do we do? What are we going to do about it? There, like I mentioned earlier, there's these structures everywhere, and there is no reliable inventory of these structures. States have done them kind of one-off. As I mentioned, Colorado has about 1,100. An organization called the Southeastern Regional Aquatic Partnership has done Google Earth-based, aerial imagery-based inventories all around the country of low-head dams. They're the ones that counted New Mexico's at about just over 500. There's a professor out of Brigham Young University in Utah and a dam safety engineer in Indiana who have teamed up with a number of other professional engineers around the country to work on this nationwide inventory, kind of coming from the place of, if we know where these are, if we have a reliable way to identify and share with the public where these are, we can prevent some of these accidents. The American Whitewater, with our partners at the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership this past year, we're actually, we teamed up because of an inventory that we did here in Colorado, and because we're both national organizations, looked around a little bit and said, why doesn't everybody have this? The Army Corps of Engineers already has a national inventory of dams. Some of you might be aware of that, but that identifies the location of large dams over about 25 feet tall, and gives them a hazard rating. Of that hazard rating, though, is specific to what would happen, what would the impact to life and or property be were that dam to fail. But as far as low head dams go, we got nothing. We've got no reliable central database for that, even though there's lots of smart people working on it. So we came together with a number of other partners around the country and lobbied with members of the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee and the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. And both committees did include our proposal that the Army Corps of Engineers compile and host a low head dam inventory for every state in the country. That has passed out of both of those committees unanimously. It is part of the larger Water Resources Development Act. That is an act that's passed every 2 years. That is authorizing the Army Corps of Engineers to perform activities for flood control, for navigation, and also ecosystem restoration. So this kind of fits well with the typical purposes of this act. We are, I don't have an exact timeline of when it's going to happen. We've got bipartisan support on it. Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina was one of our main sponsors. So this is really a broad reaching issue that that people have a lot of interest in. So exciting stuff there that will have a win, and all this work that people have been doing will actually have a place to go. So that's kind of in the life of a low head dam project, you could say that's kind of step number one. Where is it? Who owns it? What condition it's in? How dangerous is it? And then the next step is how do we prioritize our efforts? How do we identify the places that we can have some benefit from a potential low head dam project? So this is where, and I'm gonna be doing some switching screens, so I'll need somebody in a minute to come off mute and make sure you're coming with me. But there's kind of a lot of different groups that have been doing this on their own a little bit. And what's really cool, because of the efforts of the Water Resources Development Act, and just people talking to people, we've all kind of come together. And on this slide, I'm going to start at the last bullet, but the Lowhead Dam Task Force really was brought together by those folks I mentioned earlier. It's Professor Roland Hotchkiss at BYU, and Manuela Johnson, who works for the Indiana Dam Safety Office in their Department of Natural Resources. And they've brought together groups like mine, American Whitewater, American Rivers, American Dam Safety Officers, the United States, that's USSD, I'm forgetting, Army Corps of Engineers, people kind of from all over the spectrum that have an interest in Lowhead dams in some capacity, and are working to not only identify the structures, but think of a way to prioritize them. The QR code here, one of kind of the initial efforts of the task force was to crowdsource information on location of dams. If you've got a structure in your head that you know where it is, go ahead and scan that QR code, take a picture of it, save it. There is a really easy mobile tool that you can identify the location, add a picture if you have it, write a little bit about what it is, and that's going to be added to this national model that we're hoping to then pass off to the Army Corps of Engineers to maintain. So definitely wanted to include that, because it's, like I mentioned earlier, we've got lots of smart graduate level students and professors and engineers all over the place trying to figure out how we can identify these from aerial imagery, which is fantastic and a very efficient and good way to do it. But you guys, us folks who are out there and see these things and know how they work, can provide a level of understanding about these structures, obviously way better than a Google Earth image can. And often when we do those aerial imagery based surveys, there's a level of on the ground quality control and accuracy that needs to take place to really affirm that that in fact is a Lowhead dam, and provide a little bit more information about the hydraulics there. So please add your wonderful knowledge in there. I didn't do a great job of putting these bullets in order, because I'm going to go next to talking about, this is the Southeastern Aquatic Regional Partnership. I mentioned them earlier as one organization that has kind of blazed the trail on the inventory side, but then taking that a step further to prioritizing. I'm not going to drive around their website too much. I think I can put it. I can put it in the chat, and I'll do it right now because it is really cool. They've got, you can look at data all across the country, and then their prioritization tool, is what's really impressive. And then what we cribbed from a lot in the Colorado scoring framework, which I am going to drive around a little bit. The Southeastern Aquatic Regional Partnership does work primarily, it does focus primarily and really solely with their prioritization on stream connectivity. And so what we did with the Colorado tool is add the public safety and recreational aspect of that. So that is what we're going to spend the next few minutes checking out. As soon as I reload it. And Scott, can you let me know that it just loaded, but are you seeing a new screen? Are you seeing this web browser now?
Yes, I am. Lots of dots
Okay.
on the map.
lots of dots, too many dots. All right, so this is the Lowhead Dam prioritization tool that we just completed. We took the Colorado Department of Natural Resources inventory that they completed in 2019 and basically went through and tried to identify all of the data that we could have on these different aspects. So we talked to a bunch of people, did a lot of research, and broke the domains of interest out that that we knew could be affected or improved upon were we to retrofit or remove a lowhead dam structure. So if you see these 4 colored boxes here in the middle of your screen, these are those 4 different interest domains, we called them. And then the next step was to identify what sort of data we had on hand and statewide that we could identify a score, somehow quantify the effect of the benefit of mitigating the hazard of, in this case, public safety, or impact to recreation, or impact to watershed condition, and basically say, you know, it's at this state now, or if we were to make that issue go away, this is how things would score. So in this situation, the higher the score, kind of the more benefit, the better the idea of doing something at that location. Public safety specifically, we're looking at reported fatalities at the structure. We're looking at proximity to a recreational reach. So we compared that to American Whitewater's National Whitewater Inventory and Colorado Parks and Wildlife gold medal fisheries. And then proximity to population centers. So is this somewhere that a lot of people are around and there's a good chance they could come in contact with it? The next score is gets more at recreational experience and quality of recreation. Is this bisecting a reach? The dam is one of 2 that the dam that had the image of on my initial slide is one of 2 that kind of sits right in between a few really popular reaches on the Cache-la-Poudre River up in northern Colorado. And so those were those to be removed, and connectivity, navigational connectivity between those 2 reaches was achieved. That would be a great benefit and a good reason to implement a project like that. And then watershed condition, and both watershed condition and aquatic health mirror the analysis that the Southeastern Aquatic Regional Partnership folks do. That is really looking specifically at connectivity of river miles. So both interest domains bring that concept. And watershed condition is looking specifically at the complexity of the river network upstream. So if you were to remove one lowhead dam, actually, let me show you, there's a good, it's kind of hard to see, but this kind of gets at the idea of connectivity and how both the watershed health and the aquatic health were scored. So basically, each of the dots are a lowhead dam, these blue ones. Both of those scores are calculated by the number of stream miles that are now then connected if that dam were to be retrofitted or removed to provide habitat or species connectivity, you know, fish to be able to move up and downstream, sediment transport, sediments allowed to move naturally downstream now, and kind of it calculates all the number of stream miles that then connects. So here on this one on the left, we're looking at, you know, if you just took one out you're adding all the grayed out miles. If we do 1 and 2, or then we've got gray, and then we're also going to count all the additional miles up in that black. So that that picture on the right, if we just remove that number 2 low head dam, we now are calculating the scores based on all the number of river miles that are now connected between these other 2 sites. And so, excuse me. So that's where those 2 scores come from. All right, let's get into looking at some. And I'm gonna go, since you guys are headed to the Arkansas, we are gonna go look at, is that it? Here it is. We are gonna go look at this dam in Salida. Has anybody, are any of y'all familiar with the Low Head Dam? It's just upstream of the town of Salida and the Whitewater Park.
Hattie, I believe Logan spoke about that and showed us some pictures of that with the entrance.
Cool.
And
yeah, and the boat chute.
Yep.
I've actually got a picture in a few slides. This is a structure, as you actually can see. So this plot on the bottom right, this is all the structures together. This guy is basically the worst. It scores the highest among all the 1,100 low head dams in Colorado. And then if you look over here, this graph on the left, this is showing kind of how it stacks up against the other structures in each of those interest domains. So aquatic health, you know, a little bit middle of the pack, a little bit better as a watershed condition. Public safety, really high, highest score of all of them. Recreation as well. As you all know, the Arkansas sees immense amount of traffic and through this reach too. There is a boat chute at this Low Head Dam, and there's the project has received a good amount of funding. I believe they need a little bit more, but they are going to actually just go in and remove it altogether, because it scored a 1, which is the highest score. These are just 0 to 1 scores on public safety, because it, even despite the presence of that boat chute, it's killed multiple people. So
Hattie,
yeah.
do you have any statistics of rescues or fatalities at that specific location?
I do. I don't. Yeah, I do. I'd have to go look them up. I don't have them on the top of my head, but it's definitely it's up there. I want to say it's 4.
They did
but
do
I
a
can,
huge improvement up above Granite section for a diversion up there, and put
they
a
did.
boat. Hopefully you'll get
Yes.
to speak about that as well.
Yes, they did. They did, and that project was really was really popular. And quite honestly, a lot of the genesis of the project we're looking at right now came from the success of that project. It had a lot of partners, a lot of people supporting it, and we thought, well, there's a lot more of these out there, and we can do more. So kind of the purpose of this tool is to say, hey, here's our kind of biggest and baddest. What sort of things can we look at to address those? So, and I showed this one knowing that I think in the state it's killed the most people. And so what we wanted to do with the tool is make those with the greatest public safety risk stand out, and they've done a pretty, it's worked, basically. It has worked. Sorry, it's not running super smoothly, so I might not do too much more driving around. but again, I can put, you know, I can share this link with you guys if you're interested, because I am hopeful. We briefly talked about this with the New Mexico Paddlers Coalition, but I think there's some funding interest in prioritizing and identifying projects just like this to mitigate environmental issues and public safety issues at structures and rivers. So we built this in a way to try to make it something that we can replicate other places. You know, this was all happening at the same time we were working on the federal policy, knowing that we'd hopefully have more inventories, more idea of where the structures are, and have a tool that we can use to identify where projects would be best.
Hattie, is just specifically for low head dams, or can we list other river obstacles on this site as well?
The way we have it built right now, it is specific. The reason it's specific to low head dams is because it's making the assumption that it's generating a recirculating current, that it's bank to bank, I guess. Not making an assumption about the hydraulics, but it's making the assumption that it's a full bank to bank hazard. So something, you know, like a jetty jack or a fence, even something that's not got water flowing across it the whole way, it doesn't work as well with. I would say it doesn't. That doesn't mean we could tweak a few things, and you know, I don't have it. I was going to put it on here, but and Scott and Don have seen some of it, but we also have developed a tool for New Mexico to collate data on not just low head dams, but all those other navigational hazards as well too. But I think this tool specifically would work. It's kind of designed to work best with something that's, you know, from one bank to the other for the most part. All right, and so I will wrap up here soon. I wanted to just talk a little bit about what projects kind of can look like at these structures. It can be a lot of stuff. There's in the upper left-hand corner, we're looking at, this is the diversion structure for the Rio Grande Canal. This is in Del Norte, Colorado. Rio Grande Canal is huge. I think at full capacity, it is taking, I want to say 1,600 CFS out of the river. So it's a massive, massive canal. Obviously dewatering a good chunk of the river, but it serves farmers all across San Luis Valley. It is a structure because of that, because of the massive size, the number of people involved, the idea of, hey, let's like cut a big hole in the middle of your dam and let people float through it was not an attractive approach. And then almost more importantly, or equally importantly, Parks and Wildlife maintains or identifies the structure as a barrier for invasive fish species. Just upstream of here, the Rio Grande is considered a gold medal fishery. And so fisheries folks really wanted to ensure that those invasive species weren't making it up. What we're doing here, when they built this structure, they dug a channel through the opposite bank, actually the bank I was standing on when I took that picture, to divert the water while they built the dam. We're basically going to open that channel, or not open it up, but we'll have a very, very short kind of boat drag portage into a wet channel that you can float, paddle, drag your boat through, and then again, kind of drag it over a little small piece of land back to the water down below that. So kind of somewhat of a creative portage option. I don't have a photo of it, but we just completed a project on the South Platte near Fort Morgan for a big signage project. It was a similar situation, absolutely no interest from the ditch company to do any sort of work on the feature itself, but again, a very dangerous one. There was a fatality at that one as well. And there's been agreements put in place so boaters can portage on either side, and really massive in-your-face signage to ensure that people do. This picture next to the Rio Grande, this one on the top right, this is that Salida structure. So you can see there on the river left bank, that's the boat chute. There's a lot of signage upstream of that to make sure people don't go over the dam, because it is really nasty, but it isn't, I think for a long time now, I want to say like 20 years, it hasn't been pulling water. This is actually a Colorado Parks and Wildlife owned structure for a fish hatchery that's located just upstream. It's not pulling the water for that anymore because of an outbreak of whirling disease in the Arkansas River. So it is on its way to being removed, and is very exciting. So I threw that one up there because it's an example of how you can kind of leave a structure in place, allow it to continue to carry out its utility, but provide a chute to allow passage for boats, and in some instances upstream passage for fish. Another project American Whitewater worked on was a similar idea at the Tusher Dam. It's on the Green River. If you've done a Desolation Gray trip and actually floated all the way to the town of Green River, most folks get out at Swayze's boat ramp upstream. But if you keep going, and you can, because of the project at the Tusher Dam, you can now continuously float from the bottom of Flaming Gorge down into Lake Powell, because you can now float through that structure. And that was just kind of a big old notch out of the middle of the structure. It allowed it to maintain the head, so you can still draw the water out of that, but can float through it at higher flows. It creates quite the exciting wave too. And then this is a rendering from actually a project that I worked on at my previous job. This is a Lowhead Dam, a rendering of a retrofit for a Lowhead Dam in Grand Rapids. This is the Grand River, huge river channel. This is 600-foot wide river channel, and actually what we're looking at is only half of the river channel. But this project is still being worked on, but it's proposing, this is one of, I think, all in all, there would be 7 different whitewater features. And what the proposal here is to basically step down in gradient to make something that would be safe for boating, and provide whitewater parks and recreational features all the way down to back to meet the grade about, let's say, 3/4 of a mile downstream from here. So really massive project, still working on it, but a really kind of creative way, because a lot of these structures, this one included, are maintained to keep water levels at a certain level, sometimes for an intake for municipal water supply, and other reasons like that. So lots of times you got to get creative and find ways to maintain kind of the water surface that's upstream of there, but you can design it in a way so that aquatic organisms can pass upstream, and then as we care about, boaters can pass downstream. So a lot of cool options there. And I'll wrap up there, and happy to take questions, and can go back to things that I've breezed over if you've got them. But thanks so much.
Maybe we can go back through, and you can drive us through that website. And if people have a specific location that we can look at and see what the hazards are.
I love that site. I had to type it in though. on American Whitewater, there's a blurb about it, but there isn't a link to the Lowhead Dam's site that you were presenting.
Yeah, that's actually because you guys are kind of like getting it first. We're actually, there's a couple of tweaks that I still want to make to it before I publish it too far and wide. But get in there. But yeah, that's why it's not on our website yet. Thank you,
Yeah,
thank
Hattie's
you.
been working on some things map specific to New Mexico too, which are going to be a great asset once they're complete and online, and we can all provide input to make it even better.
Totally. And actually, it'll take me a second, Scott, but I meant to add a link because I want to show that too. We don't have a lot in there yet, but you know, Scott was asking about Lowhead Dam specifically, and that tool really is built for that. But with the New Mexico Paddlers Coalition, I think we are trying to find any and all navigational hazards and be able to see them geospatially and kind of how they interact with important recreational reaches.
Is this going to eventually be nationwide? Is it?
That is our hope. That is our hope. So if we're successful with the Water Resources Development Act and the inventory in there, there's a lot of different folks working on the inventory side of things. As we mentioned, that SARP, the Southeastern Aquatic Regional Partnership, is doing that really impressive work on the aquatic connectivity side. So we're actually working with them now to bring this recreation aspect into that too. So I imagine it won't look exactly like what we were just looking at. We kind of did that just for a specific grant request from the state of Colorado, but we are meeting with the Army Corps of Engineers to kind of share like, hey, this is what we've done, this is how it's worked. And, you know, if Congress tells you you have to inventory all of head dams, we've got these great tools that you can use to do it. So that's the hope.
Has there been any positive reception from like owners of diversion dams and lowhead dams about like creative portages for boaters? Is that something that's helped a possible approach?
Yeah, and honestly, what I didn't get too deep into is when we first started the project in Colorado, so we were looking at 4 things that we scored stuff on. We had 2 more kind of important we keep calling domains, interest domains that affect your ability to be successful with a project. The 5th one was something utility, industrial utility, like, is somebody using it? Is it actually being used to pull water? The slide example we talked about, it's not doing anything anymore. It's obsolete. It's just sitting there. Situations like that, take the damn thing out. What we ran into with that specifically is that there's not consistent statewide data to say that whether or not, like, you really kind of had to get down to like a site specific project to know that. And so that's why that's left out of there. And that's kind of where like local knowledge and just information comes in. And then the 6th interest domain was like, I kind of just called it the catch-all, but it was it takes that utility, industrial utility, like one step further. Like, what's the local politics? Is this like the Rio Grande Canal that serves, I think 50% of the San Luis Valley? Is it, and like there were these pieces that we couldn't put a number on, but we can say, yeah, well, I know about this one specific. And one example we've been working on is one on Clear Creek on the Front Range near Golden, Colorado. that didn't have a very interested dam owner, but the county was building is building a bike path through the canyon anyway, and said, hey, we're going to be in there doing a lot of construction. What if we like moved some rocks around so this thing wasn't like as nasty and dangerous for people recreating?
Cottonwood Campground's a great place, but yeah, Steve and I did that section just to say we had run from Saw Pit all the way to the confluence one weekend, and
Yeah.
a beautiful section.
Well, and like now that we, you know, I won't say we may never, but our opportunities to float the Dolores River are severely impacted. To be able to float, to do that into the Dolores and have an amazing multi-day trip, you know.
Can we call McPhee a diversion and get rid of it?
Yeah. Oh, I hope so. I hope so. That thing.
I had a question about liability. Are there cases in which landowners and or Lowhead Dam owners have been found liable for injuries on their property?
That's a really good question, and I honestly don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. When I talked to ditch owners about that too, they also didn't know and got pretty nervous. But it's a great question, and something I just like haven't had time to dig into. But we want to be in a position where the owner needs to mitigate the safety hazard to reduce their liability. And the idea of where it gets tricky is like, you know, and we got into this a lot with with whitewater parks in general, the idea of, you know, building an attraction that inherently, you know, has inherent danger to it. And it's, again, it's state law specific. You know, like it can vary. So yeah, lots more research needed to do on that piece, but I share your concern.
The landowners don't actually own the water, do they? They don't own the stream, do they?
Antonio, some of these diversions are like the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District or an Acequia Commission in a given area, where they have water rights to draw water from the river. And then Lowhead Dam is their means of doing that. So they own the Lowhead Dam.
They own the dam.
They don't necessarily own the water that's flowing down the river, but they have the right to draw water. So those are the people that have these Lowhead dams in place, and those are the people that might be liable if there were an injury or something, if that came to it.
Yeah.
In the Farmington area, there were numerous fatalities at Penny Lane and even at Berg Park. There was one there during a Riverfest event. But I don't think there was ever any civil lawsuits or liability claims, but those did highlight the need for retrofit. And like Penny Lane, they've made it kind of a cool green wave going down a long slope. Prior to that, there was a Boy Scout troop that had some fatalities due to a canoe event. So I don't know about liability or suing, but there have resulted some improvements to some of the features in our state.
Sorry, I was just going to ask about funding for the removal or renovation of the dams. You know, is that on the private landowner, or are there other groups helping them with those kind of things?
That's a really good question. So kind of another reason we did the project in Colorado when we did is between some large federal funding packages like the Infrastructure Act, American Rescue Plan Act. There was a lot of money in there for river restoration, aquatic connectivity type work. And I think kind of paired with other state, potential state monies that we could really, there was actually a pretty good sizable pot for that. Another federal opportunity from the National Fish and Wildlife Federation, there's a America, it's called America the Beautiful grant, and that's these are the type of, exactly the kind of type of projects, and those are the minimum grant for those is $250,000. So and I think up to $1 million. So you can get, there's like really large pots of money for these kinds of projects right now, especially if they can, you know, connect aquatic habitat, remove public safety hazard, and not have an impact to water use with a removal, or, you know, improve a diversion, improve a head gate structure, improve fish passage, boat passage, things like that. There's a lot of, especially federal funding, and that can be matched with other state and local funds to pay for the projects. And so all the projects I'm aware of, the owner, unless it was a public entity that owned the original dam structure itself, didn't put any money into it. You do have to, another big question though that the dam owners and operators bring up though is operations and maintenance. So how are we then leaving them with a, you know, a big maintenance issue and bill going forward, which, you know, I think typically there are some grant funds for that, but that usually kind of comes down to more local funding agreements to manage that.
Well, regarding New Mexico, with all our diversions, I can think of 4 diversions that portages that we had to make. Actually, most of those were for fences. There's one portage up above between the town of Chama and Highway 95 bridge. There's 2 diversions between Abiquiu Lake and Bodie's. There's several diversions below Bodie's down to Espanola. On the Rio Grande, there's Velarde, and then like 5 or 6 diversion below Velarde down into Espanola. And then there's Isleta diversion down on the Rio Grande south of Albuquerque. The Pecos has got several diversions on it. So once this website is up, anybody with experience or knowledge, especially pictures, things like that, hopefully we'll be able to add some of the input and update the library or the database for New Mexico for American Whitewater and get this stuff current.
Yeah, so this is a map Scott was talking about. So we originally put this together for the stream access case. So like these are the these were the parcels that had applied for a non-navigable certification with the State Game Commission. But what we've done is kind of just use this base map to identify, to be able to collect data on low head dams or other hazards or access issues and kind of just see it all together. So this, we kind of just finished this up. So I don't have a ton to show you, which is why I didn't include it in the presentation, but no, that's not what I wanted to click on.
Well, that's an awesome map.
Scott, you put one of the, oh gosh, there it is. Yeah, there you go. There you are. And then you can attach photos. So we're gonna use, yeah, we're still kind of getting this one off the ground too, but hopefully be able to collect a lot of data and just on river hazards and access. It's helpful to see.
Yeah,
Share
once
this.
once that becomes activated, I think you're going to see a lot more dots as people share their knowledge. I'll definitely go out and explore some of those regions between Bodie's and Espanola to talk about some of those big low-head dams that would otherwise be a
Yeah.
great class 2 float.
That'd be great. These other dots we're looking at, these are just access points and then river reaches too. So that's what we're looking at. And these are just from whatever is in, and all the reaches that are in this map here are from just our website. And actually, we've got everything in
I
the
love you
country in
guys.
there.
I love
Lots
the
of dots.
American Whitewater flow chart that shows what rivers are runnable at what levels.
Mhm.
That's a great resource too.
Yeah. But yeah, that's where all those lines came from.
I definitely want to thank Hattie for the time. I don't know why I didn't think to ask her for a presentation earlier. She's been a great resource for the New Mexico Paddlers Coalition and all the work she does. Everybody give a round of applause to Hattie. And if you've got any other presentation topics or ideas, please reach out. We're always looking for topics. So we want to keep this interesting for everybody. We want to increase our attendance and popularity. The board and the club is what you make it. We're always looking for volunteers. The clinic is proof of that. You get enough people with a passion for rivers and safety and paddling, you can have a great event. So the club is what we all make it. I appreciate everybody's effort and all that they do for the club.